So, I just finished watching the brand new Netflix documentary called Mr. McMahon. This is the brand new wrestling documentary covering the entire life and career of Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Now, if you don't know who Vince McMahon is, he is one of the most controversial figures in pretty much business as a whole. But he is, in pretty much the strongest terms, the godfather of professional wrestling as we know it. He is the founder and creator of WWE and of the modern-day wrestling world. And if you've been living under a rock, earlier this year in January, he got exposed for being an absolute weirdo. I'm not really going to go into it, but if you know the story, you know what I'm talking about. He was sending some pretty interesting text messages and doing some Harvey Weinstein-esque stuff. And because of that, he got canceled and got pushed out of his own company, and now we have a documentary. Now, this documentary is unfortunately not about that, even though the sell, what a lot of the trailers were to be, that this is Vince McMahon giving his side of that story, because we haven't really heard him or anybody in his family talk about it. Actually, this documentary was made before these allegations came out, and although they do touch upon a little bit of it, instead what we actually get in this documentary is Vince McMahon talking about a bunch of other incredible stories that we haven't heard his side on for years and years and years. So what this ends up actually being is kind of a history documentary of the WWE, where it started, how WrestleMania came to be, the war on Monday nights with WCW, all the way up to modern times. And because of that, and me being a huge wrestling fan, this is one of the best documentaries I've ever watched. I loved this. As somebody who loves the Vice's Dark Side of the Ring documentary series, which covers a bunch of the topics that are featured in this documentary, more in depth per episode, I love this one because it felt like we were getting Vince's perspective on the Dark Side of the Ring stories, but now from his point of view, and of course, a bunch of other point of views, because they bring in everybody for this. Dave Meltzer, Eric Bischoff, you have John Cena, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson doing interviews here. This was so fascinating. This documentary, it starts off amazing, giving you the history of WrestleMania, WWE, how he got Hulk Hogan, how he made stars, how he built this kind of company model to take wrestling from being this, territorial wrestling business where it's really just kind of trying to recreate sports, to making it a spectacle for TV, to make great television. And getting to know Vince McMahon as a human being, not just being this kind of demagogue that I know him from just hearing rumors, but hearing him from his mouth himself, this competitive genius that he is, and how he took this company from what it was to making it into this billion-dollar behemoth. And knowing what he would eventually do as a human being. It's so fascinating. Vince McMahon is clearly, by watching this documentary, not a great dude, but he is in all respects a very smart dude, and this business as a whole of wrestling and how we handle WCW, this competitive state where he was taking on Ted Turner, one of the most powerful billionaires in the world, and somehow was able to win that battle, is so fascinating. And seeing finally his side of the story, him telling his version of events, how that eventually went into the ruthless aggression era, how he created John Cena, into the modern day of WWE, how the business has changed, his relationship with his family, Stephanie McMahon, and Triple H, who is now running the company, how all of that transpired. There's so much fascinating, juicy stuff to go on in this documentary that makes it so fascinating. And then when you eventually get to the modern stuff and the little bit that they cover it, the only thing I really wish from this documentary is that there were like 2 more episodes to really dig into the modern day stuff. Because the Vince McMahon story feels unfinished. He hasn't really had his day in court. We haven't heard his side of the story. And if there's anything to know about Vince McMahon, is that he's very much Logan Roy from Succession. Which means
I fucking win.
He wins! He always wins. This man, no matter what, he is a cockroach. You could drop a nuclear bomb on him and he will survive. So I'm fascinated to see what the next chapter in his life is, and I was so fascinated to see if he was going to speak upon the allegations in this video. But of course he did not, and we didn't get too much from that. But wow, what a fascinating human being. And yet again, I did mention Succession. I did mention Logan Roy. I genuinely believe, and I know, that Succession was supposed to be based off Fox News and Rupert Murdoch and his family and that whole dynamic. But this, Vince McMahon, Stephanie McMahon, Shane McMahon, the story of WWE, in my opinion, is the closest real-life representation of the story of Succession. It's brilliant. It's art. This is an absolute banger of a documentary. If you're a big wrestling fan, this is a must watch. If you're not a big wrestling fan and you're into like government and business and corruption, maybe check this one out. It is also fascinating. If you're in the movies and storytelling, wrestling is movies. It's storytelling. It's cinema. So get into it. I love wrestling. A little bit awkward for Netflix, who's starting their relationship with WWE, about to be airing Monday Night Raw. This is how they start their relationship with wrestling, by putting out a hit piece on the guy that created WWE. Kind of crazy. Even though it's really not a hit piece, I feel like they're very fair in this documentary. They give Vince time to explain his piece on all of the other things. Not the modern things, but all of the other things that he's done in his career that are really shady. Some stuff like the Chris Benoit stuff, and they give him a lot of props on how he handled concussions and how WWE was one of the only businesses receptive to concussion training, where the NFL and the NHL kind of shunned away the concussion doctors. WWE brought him in, they made changes. But then they also let him speak on, like, the Owen Hart situation, where the guy fell 100, 500, whatever amount of feet it was, and got killed landing in the ring, his blood all over the ring, and instead of ending the show and sending everybody home, since a guy just died in the ring, they went on with the pay-per-view. And guys had matches on top of the blood of their friend that just died. True story. Go look up the Owen Hart stuff. Crazy. Overall, though, really enjoyed this documentary. Watched it in one day, 6 hours. Absolutely worth it. I need to talk to more women. I will give Mr. McMahon a 5 out of 5. One of the best documentaries of the year. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like this video, subscribe for more notifications. I'll see you in the next one.